Now we're going to go through the mini motor settings. You turn it on right here, and you can cycle through the general display functions right here. So let's see this. This is time since you last turned on the scooter. This is your trip mileage, and you can actually reset this, and we'll show you later. This is the total odometer. And then here we have the number of charges that it displays, but this actually only accurately displays if you fully run your scooter empty. For instance, if you use it for like, I don't know, 10 miles and then you charge it back up, this should not be counting up. And then this is the most important setting that I would recommend you use while you're riding, which is the battery voltage. So you see here it's fully charged, 67.7, it can be 67.6, right around that it's fully charged, and it will go down all the way to kind of 54. This display though is pretty advanced, and it also shows you the charging percentage right here. And this is relatively accurate, but ultimately what it does, it translates the average voltage that you're going to see while you're riding it into a battery charge. Now, because this is not linear, and because also the voltage fluctuates while riding, so if you have more load going on the motor, which means you accelerate, dual motor mode, or you're going uphill, the voltage will come down, and then ultimately once you relax a little on the power you're drawing, the voltage will come back up. So your average voltage kind of can be translated into charge, and it takes a little bit of experience, but over time you're going to figure it out with the information we're providing. Now in this display, it's relatively easy to change the gears. This is the gear button, and you just press the gear button and you see gear 1, gear 2, gear 3. Those are, as you know, not gears in the technical sense of the word, but those are rather different speed and motor torque settings. So gear 1 is going to be relatively low, gear 2 is going to be medium, and you'll probably be able to go 25-ish miles an hour, and then gear 3 unleashes the full power. From my perspective, unless you have somebody who wants to really start slowly and so on, but as soon as you get used to the scooter, because you can control everything with the accelerator right here, it's probably in the long run you're just going to have it set on gear 3 and don't necessarily mess around with it, because like that you can control the speed using your accelerator. Now, if you want to make advanced settings, which we recommend that you familiarize yourself with it, because that will allow you to customize the scooter's power to your needs, you press the mode button for about 2 to 3 seconds, and you will enter the settings mode. Here you see P0, and you can cycle through all the different settings there are, and we're going to go through each one of them in this video. So P0 is actually the tire diameter. In order to change this, you press the gear button and you can cycle through. Now, while I'm actually setting this to 10-inch, which is the actual width, the actual diameter of these tires, I'll tell you a little bit about this setting. This will ultimately influence how the speed is displayed on your display while you're riding. This was set to 10.2 by the factory, and I assume that they have calibrated it. But I recommend, if you want to have the speed setting 100% calibrated to your phone or to the GPS, to a GPS speedometer, you can set the diameter here. The higher you put the diameter, the higher the speed that's going to be displayed, and the lower you put it below 10, where it actually should be, the lower the speed will be displayed. And over time, I think plus 0.2, minus 0.2 will help you calibrate that a little bit. This is just if you want to have it 100% accurate. Now, let's get into P1. Now I changed it. I'm not going to go around again. Let's get into P1. Right here, on the mode button, you cycle through 60 volt system voltage. Nothing to change there. Let's get to P2. This is the motor magnetic pole setting. This will also influence the way the speed is displayed, and we highly recommend you leave this untouched. This should be 15, and this actually changes for the different models, the type of controllers and the type of motors they use. So let's get to P3. This is the speed signal selection. This is ultimately default 0. Do not change this. Now we get into P4, and this is for the selection of the unit that it uses. 1 means miles per hour, 0 means kilometers per hour, and you can actually see how it changes right there. P5 is the non-zero start and zero start setting. If this is set to 1, that means you will have to kick the scooter in order to be able to use the accelerator. This is a safety setting, and we highly recommend you leave this at 1. So if you get on the scooter and you stand still and this is set to 1, you will not be able to pull the accelerator, or the accelerator won't react. If this is set to 0, you can basically start from a 0 start, which means you get on here, you pull the accelerator, and ultimately the accelerator will have power. This is a safer setting because by accident you might be pulling this, and that's why we actually recommend you leave this always on, to basically having to kick the scooter in order to go. Now this is the cruise control setting. If it's 0, cruise control is off. If it is 1, cruise control is on. Now let me tell you a little bit about cruise control. Once this is set to 1, it's on. That means you hold a certain speed while riding, and automatically after about 3 to 5 seconds, the scooter will hold that speed and you can let your finger go off the accelerator. This can be nice if you have like long commutes and you don't want to keep your finger up here. You can have both hands on the brake. Ultimately, we recommend, especially in the beginning, you keep this turned off, because sometimes it can be surprising when you take your hand off the accelerator and then all of a sudden the scooter doesn't slow down, which it usually does by taking your hand off the gas. Now we get to here, this is the initial acceleration. Think about it as called slow start, because then it makes more sense. So 0 means you don't have a slow start configured, which basically means you pull the accelerator and you immediately feel the full power of the scooter. If you set this to 3 or to 4 or even to 5, which is the maximum slow start setting, that ultimately means that you'll pull the accelerator and you don't have the full torque of the scooter right from the start. And I think this makes sense, especially in the beginning, to kind of put this to 3 or so, because ultimately, if you've seen my other video, if you pull the accelerator and you're not really careful when you're in dual motor mode and turbo mode, you ultimately will feel that the front wheels are spinning a little bit and it kind of pushes you back. So in order to kind of tame this beast a little bit, we would recommend that in the beginning you set this to 3 and you can play around a little bit with the setting in order to configure the scooter to your needs. P8, this is a speed limit. 100% means ultimately no limit, and you can set this to a percentage of the top speed. So let's say you don't want the scooter to go faster than 20 miles an hour, you would probably set this to 50, which is kind of half of the top speed, and then you probably need to experiment a little bit with how much that actually does, but this is kind of the concept of it. Since the top speed usually can be easily controlled with the lever, I don't necessarily see a reason to set this, but you might, in case you want to have somebody try the scooter who is not really experienced and so on. It might be a good idea to limit this a little bit. P9, this is the overall motor torque, and this is an interesting one. So if this is set to 1, that means the motor only runs at 50% of torque. Torque ultimately means the instantaneous power that gets transmitted to the motor. And this is not just the start setting as we've seen previously on P7, but this is overall override of the motor torque. If it's at 2, it's at 75%, and if it's at 3, it means 100% of the motor power. So in case you feel like even while you're riding, the acceleration is a little too strong, you can customize that here by taking it down a little bit. Now, PA is an important one, and ultimately this is the electric braking strength. So here we highly recommend in the beginning you leave this at off, which is 0, no electric braking, or you move this to 1, little electric braking, and you will notice that when you're going really fast and you're pulling the brakes, that the electric brakes are actually relatively strong. So if you have this on 5, you're going to feel like a pretty sudden braking, because the controllers are ultimately reversing the motor power backwards so that you're slowing down. At the same time, this regenerative braking will also charge your battery. So you have to be a little careful when the batteries are full, that you do not put this on full power, and especially when you go down big hills right after having charged your scooter, so that you don't risk in overcharging the battery. There is overcharge protection there, but I think it makes sense to play it safe. This is PB, and this is the display brightness. Very simple one. You can set this all the way bright here. You can turn the display backlight off, or put it basically as you like it. And then PC is the scooter auto turn off time in minutes. This means after 5 minutes the scooter will turn off if you don't touch it, if you don't use it. You can customize this between 1 and 30 minutes. And then PD is the last one, which is the anti-lock braking system, ABS. So talking a little bit about ABS, you can turn this on and off. So let's quickly see how that works. This is ABS on, this is ABS off. This is not an automatic blocking system like you know from a car, which means if it's on, it will always be on. That means you're riding fast, ABS is on, you jam on the brakes, and ultimately, independent of whether your wheel would skid, you still feel how the brakes are doing a brake, no brake, brake, no brake within seconds, very quickly like this. So if you feel your scooter kind of has this weird braking behavior, then ABS is on and you need to turn ABS off. This is for advanced riders only, and this is custom-wise, it's turned off. A lot of people actually like it because it gives you the ability to slam on the brakes and ultimately you will not skid because the system works. What I don't personally like about it is that it always turns on. So even if you go slow and you brake, you'll still feel the kind of vibration in the brake. So I think this is personal taste. So with that, we are through the settings on the Mini Motors display. If you have any questions, of course, you can always reach out to us. But with that, you should be able to get started, kind of play around and understand how to get the most out of your Mantis Pro.